organization adapt to change? Change is a constant fact of life nowadays in every organization. And there's one factor that can really be critical to helping your organization adapt to change. And it's a word that we don't like to hear very much. As managers, we cringe, as a matter of fact, when we hear it. That word deals with how we develop our people. And the word we don't like to hear very much is training. We view training as an interruption. You're taking my people away from me and they've got jobs to do. We've got quotas to make. We've got goals to reach. And so training is viewed as an interruption. Or it's a reward. You're doing a great job. We're going to send you to some training. Or it's a punishment. You're doing a lousy job. We're going to send you to training. But very seldom do we as managers view training as an investment. And yet I would challenge us today to think of it just in those terms. The development of our people is an investment. As a matter of fact, for some of us, it may very well be the most important investment we ever make. Because when we invest in people, in developing their skills and their knowledge and their abilities, we have the potential for an unlimited return. And yet very often when we make a capital investment, we buy equipment, for example, what we do is we build in a new limit. Let me explain. About 10 years ago, I bought my first computer and it had a 10 megabyte hard drive. I was thrilled with the amount of storage. For about 6 months and it was filled. Now I thought that I had this huge capacity. Well, that's exactly what I had. I didn't have potential. I had capacity. Quickly, I hit a limit. So I added a 40 megabyte hard drive. And oh, the capacity I had for about another 6 months. And then I hit that ceiling again. So that with each new investment, all I did was I built in a new ceiling. But you see, when we develop ourselves as people, we have an unlimited number of ways that we can combine all of the things that we've ever learned to make it work for us even more effectively in new situations. Now, I come from Minnesota. It's north central United States. And for those of you that don't know it, it is cold. Now, in Minnesota, we have an interesting industry. It's called Christmas trees. And for about 6 weeks of every year, there's a cutting season where trees are chopped down. They're shipped all over, including overseas. And back at the turn of the century, they hired a guy named Olson to chop down Christmas trees. And they said, here's your quota. It's 100 trees a day. If you average more than 100 trees a day for the 6 weeks of the cutting season, you get a 100% bonus. And so the first day, Ol went out with his brand new double bit axe, chopped trees down all day, and at the end of the day, he counted up, he had 102 trees. He could feel that bonus in his pocket already. The next day he went out, did the same thing in the same way, and at the end of the day, he counted up, he had 96 trees. So he thought, well, I was a little stiff and sore from yesterday, but by tomorrow I'll really be in the swing of things. Next day went out, started right on time, cut his morning break a little short, wolfed down a sandwich for lunch, skipped his afternoon break. At the end of the day, he had 92 trees. So he went to his foreman and he said, I'm working as hard as I can. I'm doing the same thing in the same way. Every day my results get worse. And his foreman said, let me ask a question. At any time in the last 3 days, did you stop chopping wood and sharpen your axe? He said, no, if I did that, I get further behind. Now, it's obvious to us in looking at that the time that he invested in sharpening his axe was not an interruption, it was an investment. And when he returned to chopping, he was more productive because of that time. And let me suggest to you that our time together today is a chance for you to stop chopping wood and sharpen your axe. But more than that, there's something else that we've got to look at. Because what if we've got an organization that has the greatest axe sharpeners and choppers in the world, but the group down the street is using chainsaws? See, sometimes there's a problem because we're very good at doing what we do, And we're not willing to look at the possibility of needing to change until sometimes it's too late. And that's why we need to focus on the development of our people, because it's people that have to adapt to change. It is people that have to make things happen very quickly if we're to build and maintain comparative advantages in doing what we do. And you know, the thing that is most interesting about it is that you and I as individuals, as managers, have the most significant impact in how our people develop. Matter of fact, what I'd like you to do is look for a moment at this chart. And what I want you to visualize is that this column represents the time period before training is developed. This is during the training. This is after training. And there are really three people that can impact whether or not that training gets used. The manager who is sending people, that's you and I, the participant who is attending the program, and the trainer who's responsible for designing and delivering the program. Now, what I'd like you to do is to quickly rank order, using the numbers 1 through 9, the impact that people can play. So, for example, let's say I looked at it and I said, well, you know, really, it's very important for a trainer to do a good job of delivering. So I might put the number 1 in that square. Then I might say, well, you know, how a manager prepares people, that's sort of important, so I might put 2 up here. And what I would do is use the numbers 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So I use each number once and only once in each of those boxes. Now, I want your thoughtful reasoning about this, and so for that reason I'm going to give you 90 seconds working as individuals. Go. Mm-hmm. Take your time, you still have 20 seconds. I'm ready to go. What I'd like to do is share the results with you of some research that 2 colleagues of mine, John Newstrom and Mary Broad, did in working with 85 Fortune 500 companies, looking at how can we make an impact in the way we develop people. Because if we're going to make an investment in training, if we're going to make an investment in developing people, we want a return for that investment. And the interesting thing that they found through their research is that there are some very critical turning points in whether or not the training that we give our employees ever really helps to develop those employees. And so let me give you the results of the research. The number 1 place to impact whether or not training gets used the manager before. Do you think it makes a difference if a manager says, you know, I'd like to sit down with you, go over the course objectives. Now, I understand there are 5 key objectives, and from the standpoint of our department and from your own personal development standpoint, I'd really like you to focus on these 2. Now, do you think that would make a difference in how that person comes to a training program versus a manager who says, look, I don't know why you've got to go to this, but go. I've been told you have to go. Now, you realize we're short-staffed, no one's doing your job while you're gone, but go ahead and go. Do you think there would be a difference in a person's ability to learn with that kind of situation? Absolutely. Manager number 1. Number 2, Is the trainer before? See, there's something that you and I need to create in our organization, and all too often what we've had in our organizations is either mine or yours. And Jeannie Laborde, in her book Influencing with Integrity, talks about a new concept called me-or. We can no longer look at me or you, but we have to look at our. That everything we do is a partnership. And the trainer is in partnership with us as managers, and it's not their training, and it's not my training, it's our training. We are partners in developing people because we want that training to make an impact. And what they found in their research is that when a manager did not support training through the preparation of the people both before and the follow-up after, almost 60% of the impact was lost. So you and I have a big stake in that training. If we're going to invest in it, I think that you and I want that return. So the number 3 place to impact whether or not training gets used is the manager after. Do we inspect what we expect? As a matter of fact, Gary Rumler, who's one of the foremost proponents of performance engineering, said that if you take an eager, willing employee and pit them against a bad system, the bad system will win every time. You know, because what about that employee who comes back from a training program and they're very excited about it, and the boss says, look, before you say anything, let me tell you how it works in the real world. So that means that for you and I as managers, we need to be proactive about being involved in that training even as it's developed, so that we see that it's going to meet some of our objectives and that it is an investment, not a vacation, not a reward, not a punishment, but it's an investment that I can expect a return from just as clearly as sharpening the axe is going to help me to chop the wood. Number 4 place is the trainer during. Does that trainer involve people in the process so that they are acquiring skills and knowledge and really locking in the retention so that it can be used afterwards? Effective training today is a lot more than lecture. It's involvement, it's skill practice, the kinds of things that are very important to build into programs. Number 5 is the participant during. That person does have to focus. Number 6 is the participant after. Do they follow through on action plans? Number 7 is the participant before. Do they minimize disruptions? Number 8 is the manager during. Does that manager ensure that there are no disruptions during the training program? And finally, if all of those things happen, there's not really a lot that the trainer needs to do afterwards. Now, in looking at that, it really says that the manager is very important. And as a matter of fact, let me show you in another way how important the manager is. Let's look at development over time. And what I'd like you to visualize is, here is a participant who comes to a training program. And as they continue in that training program, and let's say that they start right here. And they have peers, they have coworkers, they have spouses, significant others, managers, and maybe they're all at the same place. But now as that person goes through training, they're gaining new knowledge, new attitudes, new skills, new awareness, new relationships. So when they come back from a training program, they're here, and everybody that's significant to them is there. Now, when they come back into the organization, do you think everybody looks at them and goes, wow, what can I do to be like you? You know, or do they say, give them a couple of days, they'll be back to normal? I mean, is everybody interested in rising to that new level of skill, knowledge, awareness? No. So there's a real good chance that that person can be pulled right back down because of the environment. Except that can't you and I as managers do a lot to create an environment where we're expecting them to apply those skills on the job? where we're expecting them to share their knowledge, where we're encouraging them to make that a difference. And I think that's the thing that we need to be aware of. And in order to make sure that that's happening, let me just suggest to you a truism. People will not change. You and I as managers, our employees, our subordinates, our coworkers, our children. People will not change until the pain of changing becomes less than the pain of staying the same. And see, a lot of us are in comfort zones. We're comfortable. That doesn't mean we're productive. It doesn't mean that we're achieving what we'd like to achieve, but we're comfortable. And let me suggest to you that there are 3 basic barriers to change, and let me just give them to you quickly. Number 1 barrier is habit. People come to training programs and they already have habits built up. And let me see if I can demonstrate it for you this way. Would you just quickly fold your arms like this? Okay, when I count 3, reverse your arm position. Whatever arm's on top should be on the bottom. 1, 2, 3. Okay, some of you are still trying to do it. It doesn't go that way. Now, is that as comfortable? No, it's not as comfortable. But you know, it doesn't mean that it's wrong. It just means that it's different. But see, when you and I as managers are challenged to do something new, it can feel uncomfortable for us. And when it's uncomfortable, we have a tendency to want to scramble back into our comfort zone. But when we send employees to training, it's the same thing. They come back, and maybe what they've been learning is a little bit uncomfortable. And we need to let them know that it's okay to be uncomfortable. Matter of fact, if you were to practice folding your arms differently for about 3 weeks, this would start to feel comfortable. But it also means we need to give it enough time. All right, so that's one barrier. Second barrier to change is the environment. And let me see if I can demonstrate it for you this way, just quickly. Would all of you hold out your hands like this? Okay. Now, I'm going to say 1, 2, 3, go. And when I say go, I want you to clap your hands one time just as quickly as you can. Okay, I'll give you the instructions again, then we'll do this. I'm going to say 1, 2, 3, go. When I say go, I want you to clap your hands quickly one time, just as quickly as you can. If we do this right, it should sound like one resounding clap. Ready? One, 2, 3. Go. Okay, now, I gave you the verbal instructions twice. But you see, what you saw me do was more powerful than what you heard me say. Matter of fact, I could see that some of you were going, oh, I've done this before. And as a matter of fact, a couple of you went like this, and it was like, last second I managed to avoid clapping my hands. But you see, there's the environment. People come back, and now we're trying to do something new, and maybe I'm the only manager that's doing it. And I look at what other people are doing, and maybe it's easier for me to slip back into that just because perhaps I don't want to be the only one. So again, what are we doing to create support for ourselves and for our team members as they are developing themselves so that they're encouraged to use those skills? But see, that's another barrier that's there. And there's a third barrier to change, and that's multiple priorities. Multiple priorities. And let me see if I can demonstrate that for you this way. Would you hold up your hands like this? Okay, now what I'd like you to do is take one hand, the hand of your choice, and I'd like you to simply start going like this. All right, I can tell who has moosed their hair. All right, now would you make an okay sign with your other hand? All right, now what I'd like you to do, very quickly, very carefully, put that okay sign on your chin. Go. Okay, what is this? Cheek. Okay, drop your hands. Here's what some of you did. I said, put it on your chin. Go. Some of you went like this. Some of you went, I'm not doing anything until I really think about this. You know, and about 15 minutes later you go, okay, chin. Okay, I've got it. All right? But you see, what I did is I created multiple priorities. Part of you had to put energy into this. Now you've got this. Well, you see, when we come back from a training program, very often what we've learned affects only one small part of our responsibility. And we don't have 100% of our energy to focus on implementing what we've learned in that training program. So let me ask this. Do you and I as managers make sure that people do have the time to practice that skills? Do we help them carve it out so that it doesn't get lost in the shuffle of all the other priorities? You see, we have made an investment in developing that person. You and I want a return on that investment. See, training, I think, needs to be viewed as a process. We ought to really call it the development process. It doesn't end when the program is over. It doesn't end until we see the results, because people are doing things differently. Let me give you 4 questions that you might be able to use to make the pain for both yourself and your team big enough to do something about. Now, I got this from a fellow from England named Neil Rackham. He used it in selling, but I apply it to the consultation process. The 4 questions start with the letters S-P-I-N. So I'm going to talk to you about spin. S says, what situations are you in that are causing you problems? So as I think about that with respect to my team, my employees, I might say, well, what are they doing that I'd rather they not do? Or what are they not doing that I'd like to see them doing more of? Or what are the high performers doing that perhaps the marginal performers are not doing? And because not everybody's performing at that high level, it's causing a problem. So what situations? Because frankly, if you and I as managers go, our team is perfect. They are so wonderful. They are so motivated. They are so talented. They are operating at capacity. Then why would you and I as managers ever want to develop anybody? They're perfect. Now, to be honest, I mean, is everyone on our work team operating at peak performance? There is nothing to be known that they don't already know. There is nothing to be done that they can't already do. For most of us, it's probably pretty unlikely. So P, what problems does it cause when that situation exists? What problems does it cause when that situation exists? See, because again, we have to make the pain big enough. Let me ask, has anybody here ever had a headache? Can I see a show of hands? All right, once, I think. All right. Now, how many of you, when you've had a headache, you've taken something for it? Aspirin, ibuprofen, Panadol, something like that. How many of you have ever taken something like that? Okay, do you know that a headache is not a signal from your body that it lacks aspirin? But what do? We get a headache and we take something to get rid of the symptom. We don't solve the problem. We don't get rid of the cause. We just say, well, if I could just make the pain go away. Well, you see, if we would look at what's causing it and eliminate that, we'd never have to take aspirin. And so let me just suggest that sometimes as managers, we are so in turmoil and so in crisis that we never stop and think about, what are the problems? What are the problems? Now, what's the implication? What's the cost or consequence if we don't solve that problem? What is the cost or consequence if we don't solve that problem? And let me suggest to you that there are really 3 things that you and I as managers ought to be looking at in terms of implications. If there is a problem, then what we might be looking at is training to cure a deficiency. If there is not a problem, then the second thing we might be looking at is training as an opportunity for improvement. All right, things are going pretty well. We're meeting our standards, but maybe a little training or a little coaching could even raise that standard higher. Or if there's no opportunity for improvement, if there's no problem, then maybe we ought to be doing some development for future planning. For example, if we're going to have new software installed in 3 months, do we want to wait until after we've got thousands of dollars worth of equipment sitting there and saying, oh, we'd better train people to use this? Or do we need to be providing training to get them ready to hit the ground running when that new equipment is installed? All right, what's the implication? What's the cost or consequence if we don't solve that problem or seize that opportunity? Then finally, the N stands for need satisfaction. Need satisfaction. What would it be worth to me as a manager if that problem went away? If that problem went away. And let me suggest to you that there are a number of things that you and I can look at as managers in the development of our people. Because we've already talked about the type of need, that it could be a problem, could be an opportunity for improvement, it could be future planning. But the second thing then is who, because sometimes what we need is an organization-wide approach where everybody in the company needs something, like if we were implementing total quality or something like that. But it could be right down to the job level, because you and I might have multiple responsibilities. And so maybe one part of what I do, I need some training in. Well, let me also suggest to you that once we've determined those things, training isn't always the solution. There are actually 6 different strategies for you and I as managers to consider to develop high-performing work teams. And let me just give those to you. First of all, we might need a systems change. For example, I've seen people redesign workflow and it improves performance, but only because people took the time to look at it. And so training isn't the issue. I've seen people, for example, here's one shift producing 30 widgets. Here's another shift producing 10 widgets. And they say, well, obviously the 10-widget shift needs training. Well, but not if you find out that the production line is always shut down during the 10-widget shift. Can you imagine how silly those employees would feel getting trained when they say, you know, if we could really run our equipment, we'd be right with everybody else? So training's not the solution. It's a systems problem. Maybe an OD program is the solution. Maybe we're just not good enough at communicating to people. And so again, training isn't the issue. We just need to start communicating to people because people want to feel in on things. Training may certainly be a solution or part of the solution, but placement might also be a solution. Maybe we've got the wrong person in the job because there are some differences in abilities. Then coaching. It's not everybody that needs something, but maybe it's just one person who, if we spent some one-on-one time coaching them, that would solve the problem. And then finally, recruiting. Maybe we just need to get some different people. Now let me tell you, there's one key to making all of this happen, and that key is belief in our people and the willingness to follow through. So I'd like 4 volunteers to quickly come up and help me demonstrate that. One from each table, if you just quickly come up, then I'll tell you what you volunteered for. I'm going to give each of you a potato, which I'm sure is something you've been waiting for all of your lives. And I'd like each of you to take a straw. Just take one and pass it down. Now let me ask, how many of you believe that I can show them how to take a straw, put it through the potato with a single blow so all of them can do it? If you believe that, raise your hand. Okay, that was a rhetorical question, but let me ask, how many of you would be willing to bet a new suit of clothes? Okay, no new suits for me today. All right, what I'd like you to do is take your straw, hold it with about a ½ inch showing at the top, put your thumb over the hole. All right, now what I'd like you to do is hold your potato like this. See, if you hold it like that and you drive it through, you stab your hand and we have some safety problems and we don't want that. Okay, great. All right, just right like that. Okay, good. All right. Now, the whole key to this is follow through. So if you'll watch me, here's what we're going to do. I'm holding my potato out like this, and I'm not trying to hit it yet, but I just go follow through, and notice I'm just letting my arm drop all the way down to my hip, follow through. So just maybe step forward so you avoid the table a little bit. Try that 2 or 3 times on your own. Just follow through, follow through, follow through. I know some of you are feeling silly, but just do it anyway. All right? Now, let me ask you to do this. Here's the second step. I close my eyes. And now I visualize that straw going through the potato. So again, I'm not trying to hit it, but I just go follow through, and I just see that straw going through the potato. Follow through. Practice that a couple of times on your own. Close your eyes. Okay, you can open your eyes because we do have this on video now. All right, now, as soon as you're ready, and it's just a very loose flow, as soon as you're ready, just hold out your potato like this and go follow through, and you'll drive the straw right through that. As soon as you're ready. There's 1. There's 2. There's 3. There's, well, you put it through and it came back out, sure. Okay, now, let me ask, did each of you really believe that that was going to happen for you?
No, I don't think so.
Okay. Why did we use this illustration? We use the illustration because it really drives home some key points about adapting to change in the organization. First of all, as you saw, it requires belief. They didn't have to believe they could do it. They just had to believe enough that they were willing to try. But even more importantly, they had to follow through. That's what you and I as managers need to do. We have to really believe that the development of our people is going to help our organization adapt to change. We have to really believe that as managers, we have a significant impact on making sure that employees apply what they've learned in training, both by what we do before that training occurs and by our follow-through with them afterwards. And you see, that's the other thing. The potato trick worked because people followed through. Some people talk about it and some people do it. And if you and I will follow through on the things we've discussed in this session, we'll be well on our way to ensuring that our organization adapts to change.